The sun was beginning to sink behind the rolling hills, brushing the sky in shades of gold and amber. 10-year-old Clara Monroe sprinted through the tall grass, her laughter echoing across the quiet ranch fields. She carried a messy bundle of wildflowers in one hand and a heart full of dreams in the other. By the wooden fence, Eli Carter, 16 and already broad-shouldered from years of ranch work, was mending a saddle strap. The boy had a calm, steady air about him, the kind that made even the horses trust him. Clara stopped right in front of him, breathing hard but smiling wide. "Eli," she said boldly, brushing hair from her face, "you're going to be my husband one day." Eli blinked, then burst out laughing so hard he nearly dropped his tools. "Your husband?" he repeated, shaking his head. "Kid, you don't even know what that means." Clara pouted, crossing her arms. "I do. It means you and me. We live here forever and never leave each other." Still grinning, Eli ruffled her hair. "You're something else, Clara Monroe." But her expression didn't change. Her blue eyes shone with a seriousness far beyond her years. "You'll see. I'll grow up and then you'll marry me." Eli smiled gently, more touched than he wanted to admit. "We'll see about that," he said, standing up to hang the saddle on the fence. That summer became their world, riding through open fields, fishing by the creek, and talking until the sun went down. He teased her, protected her, and sometimes even forgot she was just a little girl. Then one morning, the wagons came. Her father had decided to move their family to the city. Clara cried the whole time they packed. When the cart started rolling, she leaned out the window, shouting through her tears, "Don't forget me, Eli." "Promise you won't forget?" Eli stood in the dust of the departing wagon, hand raised in farewell. "I won't, Clara," he called back, though his voice cracked. As the wheels disappeared over the ridge, he whispered to the empty wind, "You'll always be that little girl with wildflowers in her hair." 15 years slipped away like dust on the wind. Seasons came and went, and the Monroe family ranch stood quiet, its laughter fading into memory. Eli Carter had grown into a man, his face marked by sun and time. The once carefree boy was now the ranch's backbone, steady, silent, and alone. Every morning he rose before dawn, fed the horses, and fixed what was broken. The land was his companion, the wind his only witness. Yet sometimes, when the evening light hit the fields just right, he swore he could still hear a little girl's voice calling his name. He'd smile faintly, shake his head, and tell himself it was just the wind. But deep down, he remembered her. Clara Monroe, the girl with wildflowers tangled in her hair, and a heart full of impossible promises. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Clara had become a woman. The city had polished her edges but couldn't wash away her spirit. She worked hard, made friends, and built a quiet life that looked perfect to everyone else. Still, something inside her felt unfinished, like a song that ended before the last note. Sometimes she'd catch the scent of hay after rain or hear the sound of hooves in a movie, and her chest would tighten. The world around her moved fast, yet her heart stayed somewhere on that old ranch, beside a boy who laughed at her dreams. One evening, while sorting through her late father's belongings, she found an old photograph, her and Eli standing by the fence, both smiling. On the back, written in her father's neat hand, were the words, "Summer 2009, the boy who taught Clara to dream." Her breath caught. Memories rushed back, the laughter, the promises, the way he'd looked at her just before she left. Without thinking, she sat down and whispered to herself, "I wonder if he ever thinks of me." By midnight, the decision was made. She packed a small bag, locked her apartment door, and started her car. The highway stretched ahead, endless and dark. Somewhere beyond those miles waited a dusty ranch, an old promise, and the boy who never really left her heart. The morning sun spread a soft golden light over the countryside as Clara's car rolled down the familiar dirt road. The sight of the weathered wooden gate made her heart ache. It still bore the same carved initials, EC, the mark Eli had made when he first took over the ranch. She parked beside the fence and stepped out. The air smelled of dust, hay, and memory. Every sound, the rustle of grass, the distant whinny of horses, carried her straight back to the summers of her childhood. For a moment she hesitated, afraid that the place she'd held in her heart had changed too much to recognize. But when the barn doors creaked open, a tall man stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. His hair was darker once, now streaked with gray. His shoulders broader, his eyes lined but still kind. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, his voice deep and steady. Clara's throat tightened. "Eli, it's me." He frowned, studying her face. Then his eyes widened. "Clara? Little Clara Monroe?" She smiled through a flood of emotion. Not so little anymore. For a long moment he didn't speak. He just stared, caught between disbelief and wonder. The wind tugged at his shirt, the sunlight framing them both like a scene from a forgotten dream. "I never thought I'd see you again," he finally said, his tone softer now. "I told you I'd come back," she replied. Her voice trembling but sure, a small laugh escaped him. "You did, didn't you? You always kept your promises." They stood in silence, letting the years between them settle. The horses in the distance whinnied as if welcoming her home. Eli bent down to pick up his fallen wrench, still smiling. "Well, you sure picked a strange time to visit. This place isn't what it used to be." Clara looked around and whispered, "Neither am I." For the first time in years, his heart stirred. Somewhere inside him, that little girl's laughter echoed again. And the man who had learned to live without dreams suddenly remembered what it felt like to hope. The days that followed felt strangely familiar, like pages from an old story being read again. Clara decided to stay a while, helping around the ranch. She fed the horses, cooked supper, and walked through the same fields where she'd once chased butterflies. Everything looked smaller now, yet every corner whispered a memory. Eli pretended to treat her like any other guest, but inside, he was shaken. The little girl he'd teased had become a woman, graceful, confident, with a warmth that made the ranch feel alive again. Still, he kept his distance. He told himself she was just visiting, that she'd leave soon, and that his quiet life would return to normal. But it didn't. Not when she laughed in the kitchen. Not when she brushed past him in the barn. Not when he caught her humming an old song he'd forgotten he loved. The walls he'd built over the years began to crack, and it terrified him. One evening, Clara found him sitting beneath the old oak tree, the same one they used to rest under after long rides. He was staring at the horizon, lost in thought. She approached softly and handed him a mug of coffee. "You still watch the sunsets," she said. Eli nodded without looking at her. Some things don't change. They sat in silence, listening to the crickets. Finally, Clara spoke. "Do you ever think about the past?" "All the time," he admitted. "But I stopped believing it could come back." Clara turned toward him, her voice gentle but firm. "Maybe it doesn't have to come back. Maybe it's been waiting for us." Eli met her eyes, and for a heartbeat the years between them vanished. But then he sighed and looked away. "Clara, you deserve more than this. More than a worn-out rancher with debts and regrets." Her smile was soft, steady. "I didn't come back for what you have, Eli. I came back for who you are." For a long time, neither spoke. The wind moved through the trees, carrying with it a quiet truth. That love, no matter how long buried, never really dies. It only waits for courage to find it again. The sky darkened that afternoon, heavy clouds rolling over the valley like a warning. The wind howled through the fences, rattling the barn doors. Eli had gone out to tie down the horses, while Clara rushed to gather tools before the rain hit. The air was thick with tension, the kind that comes before both a storm and a confession. A sudden clap of thunder made her jump. She ran toward the barn, hair whipping around her face. Inside, Eli was fighting the wind to pull the heavy doors shut. Without thinking, she rushed to help him. Together they heaved until the doors slammed closed with a final echoing thud. Rain pounded the roof, filling the silence that followed. They stood close, too close, breathing hard, hands still touching the latch. The dim light flickered between them, painting their faces in gold and shadow. Clara looked up, heart hammering. "You remember what I said when I was 10? She asked softly. Eli gave a crooked smile. "Something about me being your husband." Her lips trembled into a smile. "You laughed then. You're not laughing now." He looked at her, really looked. "Clara, that was a long time ago." "I know," she whispered, stepping closer. "But I never stopped meaning it." His breath caught. "You don't understand. I've got nothing to offer you. My life's just this ranch and what's left of it." She shook her head. "You think I care about that? I didn't drive 1,000 miles for land or money. I came because I couldn't forget you, Eli turned away, running a hand through his wet hair. You're just remembering a dream, Clara. I'm not that boy anymore, her voice broke. I'm not that girl either. But I still remember how I felt, safe, seen, loved. You gave me that before I even knew what love meant. He faced her again, eyes dark with emotion. The storm outside roared, thunder rolling like the sound of his own heartbeat. You kept your promise, he said finally, voice unsteady. After all this time, she nodded, tears glistening. I told you I would. For a long second, neither moved. Then Eli reached out, his rough hand brushing a raindrop from her cheek. I laughed once, he murmured, because I thought love like that couldn't last. But you proved me wrong. And under the roar of rain, he kissed her, slow, tender, and 15 years overdue. The storm passed during the night, leaving the world washed clean and still. When Clara awoke, golden sunlight spilled across the wooden floor, warming the air with quiet peace. The ranch smelled of rain and wildflowers, a new beginning wrapped in the scent of memory. She found Eli on the porch, coffee mug in hand, staring out across the glistening fields. For a moment she just watched him, the man who had once been her childhood dream and was now something far more real. Morning, she said softly. He smiled without turning. Morning, Mrs. Monroe, she laughed. Not yet. Eli looked over his shoulder, eyes full of warmth. You sure about that? She sat beside him, their shoulders brushing. I've never been more sure of anything. Days drifted into weeks and the ranch began to feel alive again. Laughter returned to the kitchen. The horses were calmer, as if sensing peace in the air. Together they rebuilt fences, planted new grass, and shared dinners under fading sunsets. The rhythm of life slowed into something steady, something that finally felt like home. One afternoon, Clara found him at the workbench in the barn, carving something from silver and leather. When he noticed her, he hid it behind his back, pretending innocence. What are you up to? She asked, smiling. Just fixing an old mistake, he said. Later that evening, as twilight painted the sky in orange and violet, he took her hand and led her outside beneath the oak tree, the same place where they'd once talked about dreams and promises. Eli reached into his pocket and revealed a simple handmade ring. Leather band. Silver heart. You said it first, years ago, he said quietly. Guess it's my turn now. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Clara Monroe, he said, voice thick with emotion. Will you make good on that promise? She laughed softly through the tears. Took you 15 years, cowboy. He smiled, sliding the ring onto her finger. Worth every one of them. The wind rustled through the fields, carrying the scent of rain and blooming wildflowers. The same flowers she once held as a child now grew freely all around them, proof that some promises never fade. As the sun dipped behind the hills, Eli whispered, Welcome home, Clara. And for the first time in her life, she knew she'd never have to leave again.